Let's talk about the winners of 40k, the Wordbearers. Chaotic space necromancers, these guys have had arguably the most significant impact of any faction on the state of the setting, along with the happiest conclusion to their story. And it doesn't hurt that they're incredibly fashionable too. Before we get into the video, I do just want to quickly thank my channel members. Vort, Cersei, Victory Kaiser, Kraydog, Jewish Dictionary, Tootsie Cat Meow, Emondo and SP Keating for supporting me, as well as ask you, if you haven't already, to like, subscribe and maybe leave a comment. It really does help smaller channels like mine more than you probably realise. Anyway, on with the video. Unlike the other first founding legions, who were known only by number until such time as they earned a unique name for themselves, the 17th were named the Imperial Heralds immediately after their founding. This name represented their early role, to deliver the Emperor's ultimatum of submission or destruction to his enemies. An ultimatum delivered by a lone herald in black armour, with a skull-faced helmet and a winged mace. A description that just might raise some eyebrows for anyone only into 40k. This early into their history, the Imperial Heralds were a bit different to their brother legions. Their original recruits were drawn from the sons of defeated enemies, raised to know the crimes of their fathers and the price of the Emperor's forgiveness. Thus, while the other legions went to war with righteousness, the 17th fought with utter devotion, fanatical zeal, and the cold fury that only the condemned and redeemed could know. Upon defeating an enemy, the Imperial Heralds would empty their libraries and records of any contents deemed heretical or sorcerous, destroying them in the name of the Imperial truth, leading to the Legion becoming nicknamed the Iconoclasts, and taking a burning book as their symbol. And now we should probably move on to Lorgar, the Primarch of the 17th Legion, who had been stranded on Colchis following the scattering of the Emperor's Genesons. A feudal world covered in ancient ruins, and orbited by derelict starships, the planet was ruled by the Covenant of Colchis at the time of Lorgar's arrival, a religious order who kinda worshipped the Chaos Gods, but in a much more reserved way than most, to be fair to them. Baby Lorgar's capsule was found by a tribe of desert nomads, known as the Declined, who took the boy in. Unfortunately, for literally everyone involved, including Lorgar, the child was discovered several days later by Cor Phaeron, an exiled priest of the Covenant, who convinced the young Primarch to become his disciple, and then promptly killed the nomads in order to keep him a secret. As you might expect, the vicious murderer and religious fanatic did not amount to much as a father, dismissing Lorgar's belief of the One, who would come to bind the polytheistic covenants together, and attempting to manipulate him in order to rule over Colchis himself. Despite his rather lacking mentor, Lorgar became a devout preacher, developing great skill in oratory, which, along with his charisma, gained him many followers, saw him rise to the position of Archpriest of the Godsworn, and named the Bearer of the Word by Cor Phaeron. Predictably, many among the Covenant did not exactly take kindly to this new preacher, who talked of a mighty warrior in gleaming bronze coming to Colchis, a Cyclopean giant in blue robes beside him, and caused disruption to their rule, and declared Lorgar a heretic. Two factions rose within the Covenant following the outbreak of violence, the followers of the Old Faith and the Brotherhood of Lorgar, leading to a holy war known as the Schism Wars that split the planet for 6 years. Unfortunately for the Covenant, this bloke was rather effective in a fight, and eventually rose as Lord of Colchis. To be fair to Lorgar, he did take as many cities peacefully as he possibly could. However, that is somewhat counterweighted by the many cities he razed instead, and by the Great Purge that happened after the conclusion of the wars. Less than a year after Lorgar's victory, a landing craft carrying Emps and Maggie, along with 2 squads of Thousand Sons, descended from orbit and met with Lorgar, who immediately recognised them from his visions, obviously, and swore fealty to his father. Every facet of the Covenant's belief structure was reorganised towards the worship of the Emperor as their saviour, and the people of Colchis united behind their new god, in elaborate celebrations and displays of piety that lasted for months, much to the disapproval of Big E, who wanted to rejoin the Great Crusade as soon as possible. Now, if the Emperor really hated being worshipped as a god so much, why did he allow this entire planet and his son to be so easily converted? Good question. I have no idea. What he did do was make Lorgar commander of the Imperial Heralds, who were soon renamed to the Wordbearers. This theme of worship and devotion continued throughout the Great Crusade for the Wordbearers. While the other legions rapidly conquered planet after planet, the 17th proceeded much more slowly, as they remained behind on each world to build temples and shrines to the Emperor, who Lorgar viewed as the god of the Imperium. Any who resisted conversion were destroyed, along with all forms of blasphemy and heresy that threatened the Emperor's realm, and vast monuments and cathedrals were raised in their place. The chaplains of the Legion, those guys with the skull helmets and black armour from earlier, produced countless works on the divinity and righteousness of the Emperor, and Lorgar himself delivered speeches and sermons, converting millions to the Emperor with words alone. It was during this period that Lorgar first began writing the Lectitio Divinitatis, yes, that one, planting the first seeds for truly widespread worship of the Emperor as a god. It was this book that would later be the driving force for the founding of the Imperial cult, the current dominant religion in the Imperium of Man during the 41st millennium. Nobody tell the Black Templars. For reasons known only to himself, Mr. I'm not a god let this widespread worship of him as a god continue without rebuke for around a century. In fact, the reason that he eventually put a stop to it was nothing to do with the worship itself. It was that it made the Wordbearers' expansion of the Crusade too slow, as they left a large part of their fleet behind on each world in order to convert them. If they had simply left a squad or two of marines to handle the conversion of each world, I genuinely don't know if the Emperor would have even cared. Unfortunately, however, the work culture of the Imperium was nothing if not toxic, and Big E did in fact care. This all came to a head at Monarchia, the capital city of the world of Kerr, and a perfect culmination of all that the Wordbearers had worked towards, and Emps commanded Bobby G and the Ultramarines to utterly destroy it, before psychically forcing the Legion to kneel in the ashes and renounce their worship of him as a god. Now, far be it from me to judge who is and who isn't a god, but someone with the power to do that seems to fit at least a few definitions of the word. Also, at Monarchia, Lorgar smacked Malcador into a wall, but he was fine. Fortunately for Big E, Monarchia did make Lorgar realise that his worship of the Emperor as a god had been a mistake, although, unfortunately, the Primarch maintained his view that faith and worship were integral parts of the human psyche, and thought that maybe other truer gods did still exist in the universe. Encouraged by Cor Pharaon, who by this point had been transformed into a half-Astartes, as he had been too old to undergo the full procedure, and everyone's favourite chaplain, Erebus, who was a high-ranking if relatively unremarkable member of the Legion at this time, who had both already fallen under the influence of chaos, Lorgar began his research into the old faith of Colchis, coming to realise that it shared a common message and origin with many other belief systems across the galaxy, and so therefore they must be connected. Kinda like how many ancient cultures had flood myths, and so there must have been an actual globe-spanning flood, right? Unlike the flood myth, though, Lorgar's belief turned out to be well-founded, and led to him taking the Pilgrimage, a journey into the Eye of Terror in an attempt to uncover the truth of the universe and enlighten both humanity and his father. As a front for the pilgrimage, the Wordbearers rejoined the Great Crusade, scattering themselves across the stars and bringing more world into compliance than ever before. Eventually, Lorgar and the 1301st Expeditionary Fleet came to Cadia, which at this point was a relatively undeveloped tribal planet that worshipped the Chaos Gods, as opposed to the impenetrable fortress world that it became. or the chunks of rock and space dust that it became after it turned out that anything is penetrable if you lob a Blackstone Fortress at it. A native of Cadia, known as Ingethel, which I have no earthly idea how to pronounce by the way, was chosen by the gods to lead Lorgar to the so-called primordial truth, undertaking a ritual to ascend to demonhood in order to do so. Ingethel the Ascended led the Serrated Sun chapter of the Legion, led by Argel Tal, who is actually a brilliant character throughout the Heresy and is probably single-handedly the reason that I like the Wordbearers so much, into the Great Eye, in order to show them firsthand the fall of the Eldari Empire. According to Ingethel, the reason that the Eldar fell was not simply that they birthed Slaanesh, but that they birthed Slaanesh and yet did not accept her, and felt no joy at her birth. Slaanesh awoke to find her worshippers abandoning her, and so did the level-headed thing and killed billions if not trillions to show her displeasure. Now, I don't know whether I believe that or not, but the important thing here is that Lorgar did, becoming convinced that in order for humanity to survive, they must avoid the mistakes of the Eldar, which in this case means accepting chaos, not the orgy thing. Thus, the pilgrimage proved a success, demonstrating that the imperial truth of the Emperor was a lie, and gods did in fact exist. Secretly pledging themselves to their newfound dark gods, the Wordbearers hid their fall for the next 4 decades or so, spending that time attempting to enlighten humanity about the primordial truth, and seeding their forces throughout the other Astartes legions to establish warrior lodges, and convert them from within. This subterfuge proved rather successful, and the Wordbearers managed to sway several Primarchs to their cause, most notably Horus Lupercal, the War Master, after Erebus caused him to get stabbed with the poop knife. In the meantime, the Legion managed to avoid suspicion by waging a great many campaigns, becoming one of the most militarily successful legions in the Crusade, and the second largest after the Ultramarines. When it became clear that humanity could not be enlightened without bloodshed whilst it remained under the influence of the Emperor, Lorgar decided it was time for a change of management, let's say, and laid the groundwork for what would later become the Horus Heresy. Following the outbreak of the Heresy on Istvans 3 and 5, the Wordbearers and their allies abandoned all pretense of loyalty to the Imperium. The 150,000 or so warriors of the 17th Legion openly began to preach of the Chaos Gods, changing their armour from grey to crimson red, and utilising large numbers of demonically possessed Space Marines. The bulk of these possessed freaks were sent to Calth, one of the most important worlds of the Ultramarines' realm of Ultramar, under the command of Cor Phaeron. In the ensuing conflict, 3 of Calth's sister planets were destroyed, and the system's sun corrupted, increasing its radiation output tenfold and forcing the defenders on the planet into the caverns below the surface, though in the end Cor Phaeron was defeated and driven back towards the Maelstrom. Meanwhile, Lorgar and the World Eaters led the Shadow Crusade throughout the rest of Ultramar, aiming to create a massive warp storm to cut Ultramar off from the rest of the galaxy and keep the largest loyalist legion out of the wider conflict of the Heresy. It was also during the Shadow Crusade that Lorgar took Angron back to his homeworld of New Syria, where he used Angron's rage at being remembered as a coward who abandoned his fellow rebels to fuel a Khornate ritual and transform the Primarch of the World Eaters into the first Demon Primarch. Following the Shadow Crusade, the Wordbearers were ordered to muster at Ulanor for Horus's planned push for Terra. By this point, Lorgar had come to view Horus as weak for refusing to truly embrace the Chaos Gods, and secretly planned to usurp him as War Master. After using Zardu Lyak to bind Fulgrim, using his demonic true name, Lorgar attempted to use him in a coup to dispose of Horus. Unfortunately for Lorgar, however, he had given control of Fulgrim to one of his legionaries who happens to be absolutely done with his shit, and the coup failed, leading to Lorgar's exile from the traitor cause. Despite the departure of their Primarch, the Wordbearers under Lyak would take part in the Siege of Terra, before being forced to flee after the defeat of Horus. Following the defeat, the Wordbearers' homeworld of Colchis was destroyed in the Great Scouring, forcing them to retreat to the Eye of Terror, where they have since remained, barring the occasional joint into real space to raid and pillage. As a result of this, and the relatively stable mental state of their Primarch, they are probably the most organisationally unchanged of the original traitor legions, barring perhaps the Iron Warriors and Black Legion. Though they are, as with all traitors, still split into warbands who each pursue their own goals and wants above pretty much anything else. At some point after this, I don't think we know exactly when or how, but I could be wrong, Lorgar ascended to demonhood, and has since isolated himself deep within the huge tomb complex on the demon world of Sakaris, forbidding anyone to interrupt his meditation, and leaving Erebus and Corferon to an eternal dick-measuring contest for overall command of the Legion. The one exception to Lorgar's self-imposed exile from his Legion was when he revealed himself to aid the Word-Bearers against a mysterious entity that was hunting them, which later revealed itself to be the freaky bird form of Corvus Corax, Primarch of the Raven Guard. Lorgar and Raven duelled, Lorgar got his shit kicked in and was forced to retreat, and Corax told the 17th Primarch that he now had his scent and would hunt him down. It was this interaction that led to all the memes about Lorgar hiding from Corax. I'm sure you've seen at least one somewhere. So that was one of my favourite legions, the Word-Bearers. As opposed to many factions in the 41st millennium, who can, at best, be said to be desperately clinging to survival, the Word-Bearers have found, made peace with, and spread worship of their deities, ironically only finding those gods after being punished for following what is now the dominant religion of the Imperium, have succeeded in their original pre-heresy goal to turn the Imperium towards worship of the Emperor, and have also succeeded in their post-heresy goal, to drag the Imperium down into a broken, stagnant hellscape. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much, it really does mean a lot. Like, subscribe, all the rest. A huge thank you again to my wonderful channel members, and I will see you all in the next video.